Bring out your best with Replacements.com. It's time to take out those cherished china sets, elegant glassware, and heirloom silverware. Why keep them hidden away when you can make every meal a special occasion? At Replacements.com, we believe in celebrating life's moments with the things you love most. Worried about a mishap? Don't be. Whether it's a chipped plate, a missing fork, or a shattered glass, Replacements.com has you covered. With our vast inventory, we can help you find the perfect match to keep your table looking flawless. Visit Replacements.com today.
Decisions.
Wait a minute. Are you still looking for cars on Carvana?
Yeah, decisions.
When I used Carvana, I found the exact car I was looking for in minutes. Bought it on the spot.
Electric or full diesel? Decisions.
Come on, you've been at it for weeks. Just buy it already.
You're right. Crossover it is. Decisions decided.
Whether you know exactly what you want or like to take your time, buy your car the convenient way with Carvana.
Welcome to the Idaho Sheriff live stream broadcast with Dan Wilson for Kootenai County Sheriff, where we all together discuss things liberty without compromise. I'm your co-host, and occasionally, my name is Dawna Wilson. I'm here to screen your questions and comments. Sometimes I chime in on the discussion. We invite all questions and comments. Dan will answer them all. You're only going to be censored. That is, we put you in a temporary timeout if you're being inappropriate or if you're flooding the comment section with needless heckling that doesn't move the discussion forward. Mike Petum of North Idaho News was our most recent timeout recipient. It was only temporary, though. So, Mike, you can try again if you'd like. If you have an honest question, that is. Anyone with a question, just put that right into the comment section of whichever platform you're watching. As always, for the most interactive and full screen experience, join us on Facebook or YouTube. But if you're on Instagram, we still love you. Take a moment to share this live broadcast right now to your profile so that your friends can join in with us. And if you're listening back to the Idaho Sheriff podcast, thank you for joining us. And remember, listen and subscribe to our podcast wherever you get your shows. Did you know that Dan Wilson is the only sheriff candidate recommended as the constitutional sheriff for Kootenai County by Sheriff Richard Mack? Now, here's Dan Wilson.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We have just completed 10 straight days at the Idaho State Fair. I used to call it the Kootenai County Fair.
But it is the North Idaho State Fair.
A lot of fun. 10 longest days of my life. However, the amount of people that showed up to say hello, to talk with me, to hear what my message of liberty without compromise and the vision that I have for Kootenai County for the next 4 years and beyond was, I don't know, it was beyond overwhelming.
Yeah, I'm showing some of those photos right now.
So basically from morning until night with very few lulls, all 10 days, we met with so many of you. In fact, I'm hoping that many of the new people that have joined the Idaho Sheriff campaign posse have shown up tonight to participate, to ask the questions, and to comment back and forth with all people that love liberty without compromise. And I want to say thank you so much to Ann Blatt, who organized our booth, all of our volunteers that showed up for every shift. We had basically a full tent of minimum of 4 to 6 of our volunteers at every shift, helping us reach out to the public. So many didn't even know who Dan was, but they do now. So to all the volunteers, it's too lengthy to read right here now. I appreciate each and every one of you, the sacrifice that you made to come and be with me and help spread this this great message of encouragement, one of liberty without compromise.
I was going back to this photo here. Dan's going to probably have to like stop and cough multiple times throughout tonight, because the talking 10 days straight for almost 12-hour shifts, like he was mentioning there at the state fair, kind of did a number on his voice. Here's a photo. This was Dan Wilson meeting Dan Wilson.
Yeah, that was
cool.
A
fun one. So I'm not going to go through all these. That photo gallery is available on our website and then also on our Facebook page. So if you know that you had your photo taken with Dan, you can go there, check it out, give it a thumbs up, and come and comment on that Facebook page. We had a young man that came into the fair, parking, fair admission, and came in order to meet you face to face, because he had been watching and following your journey, has been inspired by the message of liberty without compromise, and wanted to come in and meet you in person.
Yeah.
That was a touching moment. I'm glad that I was standing there at the booth when he came in, and there were so many other similar stories like that. Yeah. Like you said, for some people it was, hey, who is this Dan Wilson guy? But really so encouraging to know how many people have already been following along and wanted to come over and say hi.
Yeah, and brother, if you're listening right now, you came up to me last weekend, I think it was on Friday night, and I just want to tell you, you're doing a good job. Stay encouraged, stay strong and courageous. In fact, remember that every man and woman in America, we are all equal. We are all working shoulder to shoulder, those of us who want to preserve this great legacy of ours, this liberty without compromise. So stay encouraged. All my friends out there, we had this conversation over and over and over again. Do not despair. Tough times ahead, but we are a resilient people who believe in God, and we're going to work hard to restore our republic right here in Kootenai County, preserve it. And, it's for everyone, even if you don't believe the same as Dan Wilson. If you believe life, liberty, property, pursuit of happiness, welcome aboard.
Dan and I had been watching the Board of County Commissioners meeting that's going on now down at the Kootenai
County building,
the county building, and they're right now as we speak, they're taking comments from people who have been sitting in there, kind of waiting for them to finish their presentation. So that's been fun to watch. I see a familiar face making a comment now, but we may jump to that later in the program and just pick up and see what questions are coming from the community to the board now that they've finished their presentation. We've already got some questions coming in here on Facebook, so we might get to those in a minute if your voice is ready.
Love it.
We want to remind you that you can get this Liberty Without Compromise shirt that Dan's wearing.
Hey, lucky it's a size medium, European style.
European medium. It's available on the website at theidahosheriff.com. We had a lot of people stopping by the state fair and asking where they could get these.
We got out of our shirts really fast. They were gone the first 2 days.
Yeah. But you can get these in the men's, women's, the size that's appropriate for you. And then also hoodies and sweatshirts, since we're already getting some cool weather and it's not even September yet. So that's kind of a bummer. And then you can sign up for our campaign posse. Dan may have mentioned that already, but you can sign up for that on the website at theidahosheriff.com. And are you ready to get to some cooking?
One more reminder.
Go for it.
I am definitely on the ballot this fall. We get this question all the time. In fact, we heard it numerous times over the 10 days at the fair, saying, well, I thought we already voted for sheriff, but remember that was a primary back in May for the political parties to decide who their contender was going to be to go to the general election. So independents like myself, we don't have a primary, and I'm going all the way to the November election on the 5th of November against Bob Norris. You can vote for me regardless of what your party affiliation is, and you definitely have permission to vote for me no matter what political affiliation you are, as long as you believe that Dan Wilson will protect every citizen in this county's right as chief law enforcement entity of the county. I will guarantee that my office serves every person with honor, respect, dignity, equal protection under the law.
Paul and Linda, I see your questions. I want to know want you to know that we're going to get to those here in a couple of minutes. But since we are still talking about the fair, we had a couple of of run-ins with County Commissioner Bruce Mattare.
Oh, Special Deputy DC Mattare.
Deputy, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what happened there? Well, our booth was close to KCRCC, who also then housed Bob Norris, which had Bob Norris and all his supporters hanging around that general vicinity. So Bruce Mattare being one of those. Yeah. And he likes to hang around KCSO with his special deputization.
Yeah.
So you can frequently see him in the area with some of the other deputies and his sheriff.
Well, I think he feels emboldened, right? He probably wouldn't say the same things, I'm guessing, in a dark alley at night.
Maybe not.
But he was, I guess, in the middle of the food court one night when you and I were walking past, and my voice is shot, so I can't give the same expression, but we walked past and he kind of did a loud, ha. And and I'm looking, I'm like, okay, bro, whatever.
Dan and I were walking together. He was walking toward us. We were going to get some ice cream on a short break. Yeah. He looks at us and he goes, ha. Yeah. And I looked at Dan and I was like, was that for us? Yeah.
Well, he's a sword fighter. Everybody remember that Bruce Mattare.
On guard.
On guard, yeah, on guard. So maybe that's the way those little, professional fencers do it. Ha!
That's how you start the round.
I challenge you to a duel.
Maybe that is what it was.
So anyway, we walked back towards our tent. We passed the KCRCC booth, and Bruce wanted to start engaging. So you and I had no intent whatsoever to engage, but he was standing right inside the booth at the entrance there, and he said, "You, Wilson, are the biggest wimp I have ever met. You are a absolute wimp." I had a town hall, he says, a couple weeks ago for county commissioners. You could have asked me anything, and instead, you don't even bother to ask me a question. What a wimp.
As I had my ice cream and I just kept...
I think I was doing the same thing too.
Well, he's just going on his rant.
So I'm looking at him going, is this like grade school or something? And, I said, well, Bruce, unlike you, who has come to several of my events with the specific purpose of grandstanding and upsetting my events, I don't do the same thing to you.
This is the story of the one who, as a maintenance specialist for a historic high-rise, knows that vintage charm historically needs constant attention. Which is why when it's time to upgrade turn-of-the-century mechanicals, they turn to Grainger. With easy access to 1 million-plus products and the scale to deliver when and where you need them. The right tools and supplies are never far away. So the one can keep that vintage building running like new. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Lowe's knows you want to get even more value for the holiday. That's why as a MyLowe's Rewards member, you get new member deals on holiday decor, tools, and more. And you earn points when you shop. More points equal more rewards to help you save on holiday and more. Not a member? Join for free today at Lowe's.com/MyLowe's Rewards. Because Lowe's knows deals. Program subject to terms and conditions. Points are awarded on eligible purchases. See Lowe's.com/terms for full details. Subject to change.
That is the difference. And so then he said, well, again, you're a wimp. Again, on guard. Cha-cha-cha-cha. On guard. But I did tell him as I was walking past him, Bruce, a reckoning's coming.
Yeah, he didn't like that too much.
So he responds back and goes, a reckoning's coming for you. So anyway, this is your current county commissioner, special deputy that's representing you. That's the behavior of your elected officials. So again, I didn't engage him. He engaged, but it was comical. And
and that boy is 50-something years old.
I think that he also wanted to get off his white glove and go whap. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The only thing that's missing is a little thin mustache.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I think we could probably make that happen. You ready for first question?
Let's go.
Okay. So Paul Williams, thank you for joining us on Facebook. Wants to know, how will you work with or deal with commissioners to secure the needed budget? I think this is an appropriate question considering we were just talking about one of our county commissioners.
Paul, that is an outstanding question. And I've actually discussed this before, but I'm glad you brought it up because it needs to be discussed again. Look, as sheriff, I will be doing my best to unite the entire county electeds together for a mission of securing our county and providing the greatest services for our people. Now, of course, they're elected by you, the people, and you also must hold all electeds accountable. But I've already spoken with Mark Everline and expressed with him my desire to work very, very close with him in order to do the best service to our county as possible. I believe that the discussions we've had, that we are very much in alignment. I respect Mark. He's been a very successful businessman over the years. He was a proven previous county commissioner. Common sense. I like the heck out of Mark. As far as Chairman Duncan, Leslie Duncan, I don't know her very well, but what I do know of her from my observations at the various Board of County Commissioner meetings is she's very well put together. She comes prepared. In fact, I laugh every time she catches usually the sheriff's office with moving budgetary items that they claim that they were supposed to be pulling out. She's very sharp. She's way more prepared than what the previous two other commissioners are. And she has great composure. I believe that because she was former law enforcement as well in a similar capacity as mine, I believe that we have a lot in common. So I have no doubt that the 2/3 of the Board of County Commissioners, we're going to get along very, very well. Now, as far as Special Deputy Bruce Mattare, we're probably going to get on pretty good, especially when I take his special deputization away. So once he goes back into his own lane and is no longer part of the sheriff's office, where he kind of comes and goes as he wants to, kind of like those slithering snakes that are in the movies. Anyway, but we're going to sit down, we're going to have discussions, and we are going to do everything we can to fiscally take care of the county on the sheriff's office side. I'm going to ask both commissioners and, the third as well, for budgets to get a forensic audit quote and implement that for the sheriff's office to go over the budget top to bottom to find out where we have been spending the money, where we're wasting it. I'm looking forward to that report. It's going to take a while, but it's going to be well worth it, especially when we've moved the budget up 33% since Bob Norris has come into office. Last year, we went from a $43 million budget to a $50 million budget. And I have seen personally a lot of ways. I'm going to talk about this a little bit later. Hope that answers your question. Thanks for it.
All right. We got another question coming in from Linda, and I'm going to put that up on the screen here in a minute, but I'm going to let Dan clear his throat if he needs to, or take a drink of some tea. Remember, you can add your question or comment right there into the comment section on whichever platform you're watching. And a reminder for those of you on Instagram, we have gotten reports that Instagram feed can be a little bit in and out or a little bit spotty, and you can get a full screen experience, and we can share your comments and questions to the screen if you join us on Facebook or YouTube. So next question is from Linda. Thanks for watching on Facebook tonight. She asks, are you receiving support from retired or current law enforcement officers?
That is a great question, Linda. Thanks for asking that. The answer is yes. Not only retired law enforcement professionals who range from not only retired from a very long, but also held very prominent roles within their respective departments, but also recently separated. We have in Kootenai County what I call Copland. We have, attracted law enforcement professionals from all over the country, and a lot of them from California, who have come up here many times retiring early because they needed to flee the place that they left. And I've talked with these deputies and former police officers who said, we will join up your deputy reserve program in a heartbeat. And also current. There is a large segment of Kootenai County Sheriff's Office that has reached out and voiced their support of me. I know that Deputy Sheriff Association FOP gang is not included in that, but I even had a deputy last week when I was walking into the fair right before we started. I had my arms full. And one hand, I had an armful of my yard signs. And deputy came up and he said, hey, can I help you with anything? And I said, sure. Would you please carry these signs for me? And in full uniform, he carried those signs all the way across to my booth for me. And he basically said, I don't care if Bob sees it. I mean, the folks inside the sheriff's office that are not a part of this deputy gang are sick and tired of the Bob and Bruce show. And they want a change. And I'm not going to reveal names, but I mean, we've had some just sincere conversations with former KCSO employees that have retired recently within the last several months to a couple years and current. And they all tell the exact same story without collaborating together. So we know it's bad. If you're inside, hang on. We're going to get this through, and we're going to restore normalcy inside the sheriff's office, integrity. We're going to turn things around for you.
Contrary to what was being said closer to the beginning of the campaign, Dan Wilson gets elected. There's going to be a mass exodus inside the KCSO, which was something else to implement fear into the community because they think, that's going to be a huge effect on the community to have that happen in that transition period. And then what happens to all of our services. But it just isn't the case based on conversations you've had and the sheer numbers from even inside that are coming to you. It's
even support staff that just absolutely cannot, non-sworn, that cannot stand the way KCSO is operating. It's not a merit system. It is one of cronyism as to if you do something to make the sheriff happy, you're rewarded. And I've said this before, but even at Bob's private campaign events, he is flanked by usually 1 to 2 of these Deputy Sheriff's Association FOP board members. And maybe they're not all board members. I mean, I shouldn't say just board members, but he's always flanked by somebody because Bob can't stand. He just can't stand on his own. Or maybe they're there to remind him to shut his mouth.
Oh, it could be it. He's got handlers for sure. Paul chimed back in and just said budget increase and staffing is still at a crisis level, exclamation point.
Yeah. And again, until we go in there and figure out what we can slice and dice out of it, it's going to be a hard haul in the front, but my transition team is going to be ready to hit the ground running to take care of all these different fronts that we're going to be facing, and there are a lot. So yes, my priorities is going to be to make certain that we are financially taking care of the men and women of the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office, getting them a righteous salary. Remember, it's a calling, not a career to where you will become a millionaire, but we're going to make certain that the dollars are in alignment, but more importantly, to make certain that people actually want to work with the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office, hence why we are down so many in the jail. And I've been told we are one event away from having a consent decree by the DOJ coming in. One event. They are that short-staffed in the jail. It is at an all-time danger level. And so, we're going to have to dive into, but I'm going to tell you, here's one area of waste in a sheriff's budget that I recently saw. $60,000 for a side-by-side, a 4-seater side-by-side, so a couple deputies could go hot wheeling up to the radio towers instead of leasing as needed from one of the many ATV rental companies in Kootenai County. And we're also going to talk about things like license plate readers. Look, we don't need every toy that comes out. We are going to look through every line item and figure out what is not essential. We're going to cut it in order to make certain that the people are making a livable wage, people that will then decide they want to come and work for Kootenai County Sheriff's Office due to fair wage and a culture of extreme ownership. And it's not going to be able to happen overnight. Look, this problem has been 4+ years in the making, but we're going to work very hard, very quickly in order to right this ship.
Before I move on to the next question, talk to us really quickly about what it means being one incident away and the federal oversight coming in. Yeah. What does that mean? How does that play out?
In essence, to break it down, they're one event away where somebody gets injured inside the jail, an inmate or a civil rights violation due to not having enough staff to safely run the jail. That happens. Then the feds start looking and they come in and they take over. Okay, and they basically, they now become the de facto organizer, the project manager of the agency. That's the quickest way to describe that.
In a bit, we're going to be talking about coffee with your sheriff. Yes, so Sheriff Bob Norris had a coffee event today in Spirit Lake. we were present for that coffee event. And,
Yes, we were.
And I would say it did not disappoint.
It never does.
It was really a reflection of a lot of what we talked about when he puts on his events. So that's coming up. Next question is from Tina on Facebook. What is your stance if the FBI rolls in here for illegal search and seizure? What would your stance be? And she's apologizing if that's been asked before.
Yeah, so I know that's everyone's concerns. I can tell you, I don't believe that is ever going to happen, especially in Kootenai County. We were very rebellious during the COVID lockdowns in general, despite what the leaders were doing. So hypothetically, I mean, things like that could happen. Sheriff Dan Wilson will be sitting down with all federal law enforcement agencies working inside Kootenai County with a very firm rules of engagement that if they're violated one time, the consequences will be definitely articulated out. We can say that we're going to be attacked by Chinese or, from Canadians. Hypothetically, so many things could happen. I don't see that happening, but if the county were ever at a position where anybody came in to deprive people of their life, liberty, and property, to deprive people of their due process, we're going to make certain our citizens are safe. And I mean, that's one of the great things about the sheriff. He has the power to do what he needs to do in order to protect his citizens. But I just don't see that actually taking place.
There was a coffee with your sheriff in Spirit Lake today. Mm-hmm. It was this morning. So these are always held at really convenient times for people who work. Yeah. Did it live up to your expectations? We got to go. We got to attend.
Live up to my expectations. Yeah, sure. I mean, it was exactly what I'd anticipated. So the room, we had our people there, which were about 6, 7. And then we had probably, I don't know, you had Mike P. Toom there. You had Charity Joy from the Kootenai.
Mike P. Toom, North Idaho News.
Yeah. So,
# North Idaho News.
And Charity Joy. And by the way, folks, remember when you're reading the Kootenai Journal that Charity and James, her husband, are avid fans of Bob Norris. They're huge supporters. Not certain how that works for independent journalism, but that's something to keep in mind. Second of all, when it comes to Mike P. Toom, who we've observed many times flanking Bob, I guess, as his bodyguard. But
he's more of a bouncer than bodyguard.
Do you think he's really, well, who's he going to bounce? Little chihuahuas?
He's going to bounce somebody.
So they were there. There was probably, I don't know, half a dozen people that were not really from the area. In fact, I don't really recognize anybody from Spirit Lake, and we live close by and we frequent that location. And then the rest was Bob, his support staff, his administrative assistant, Lisa, and then I think it was like 12 deputies. Mm-hmm. Jail captains again.
They started arriving a little bit before Smart, 9, and they just kept rolling
Lieutenant
in.
Headland.
I mean, it was to the point of, is this even serious?
And I've been telling you folks this for a very long time. Last year, those Coffee with Your Sheriff events were 7, I believe, in total. This year, from January through May, there were 12 in total. And since that time, we've had probably 4 or 5 more of those events. And every time he's bringing this entourage, which it's all about appearance, folks, and I'm going to tell you why here in a second. It's all about appearance. That costs the taxpayers. And you figure a minimum of 2 hours for these events, even travel time for the deputies, and you figure about $100 an hour. You're talking last year, 23, and May of this year, January to May, $45,000 in cost to have these deputies show up. We're probably well over close to $60,000 right now, all the vehicles that they have to drive up in. But here's why it's ridiculous. Most people at these events don't ask the complex questions that Bob Norris, who's got 30 years, as he likes to remind us, of working experience as a law enforcement professional from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, he's not capable of actually answering questions that, little mom and pop that don't know the first thing about law enforcement in terms like probable cause and reasonable suspicion. He brings all these guys in to show what a big shot he is because he can't actually answer it in his 5-star collar uniform. We did get to, though, ask one or two questions today of his support staff. So.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to overemphasize the fact that there were not community members from Spirit Lake that attended this.
There were some from kind of an outline. We met those ladies, the vast majority.
You had KCSO staff, command staff, and other support staff. You had some, Dan and I attended, and then some of our supporters, admittedly. We had a number of us there, and then a lot of other Bob supporters that follow him around to these coffee events. So you got to remember, if we were just trying to have a showdown between the two sides, we should have done it in some other venue and not one that's costing taxpayers with that many KCSO staff.
He had his so-called de facto campaign manager, although I'm not certain how much of a campaign manager he is, Van Horn, who used to be a LASD deputy. He primarily was, I think, the last several years working firearms forensics. So he would fire the guns and figure out if the bullet came from that gun. And he's an NRA board member. He's already endorsed Bob. There are several others, gray hairs that I've seen before in there. But, other than the two journalists.
Yeah. And I want to repeat again, since you mentioned the journalist, then the journalist, the quote, journalist that he's bringing in, do the bidding for Bob Norris.
Yes.
So that's Mike P. Toom with North Idaho News.
Yep.
And that is a huge, a Facebook group that's got a significant following and growing by the day. And they do a very good job with very quickly posting up accidents that happen and other information that the community is, like sitting on the edge of their seat to get information for. But then that also makes that a very powerful tool for Bob Norris.
Sure.
When Mike P. Toom is pushing that information through and making sure to flood that into the community to make corrections or to, quote, put out the truth. And then Charity Joy Kootenai Journal, again, why were these two supposed news outlets invited to this event at the coffee shop? And it's all optics, as they say.
It's optics, and there's one more thing that I want to follow up on that. Mike P. Toom has inserted himself before when our team was out on the corner of Prairie and 95, I don't know, it must have been June or July, waving our signs. Well, he's that guy. And you know what? I probably would do the same thing when I was in my 20s. He jumps out in the midst of the Dan Wilson signs, and he's got his little Norris for Sheriff sign too. So yeah, folks, remember when you're looking at North Idaho News, the Mike P. Toom pals around. He's been observed around not only Mattare, Special Deputy Mattare, but also Bob Norris. And, in fact, James today, Charity's husband, called me, I think, plug your ears if you got kids in the room. I'll give you a couple seconds.
Oh, I have a bleeper on.
Okay, well, he called me. Where's that? Is it?
I can't do it.
He called me an a-hole, an Adam Henry. While Bob's supposed to be putting on this town hall, he doesn't like a question. He puts it back on me. I throw it back to him and say, "This is your show, Bob," or maybe we need to ask, some of your 12 deputies that are here. They probably have the answer that you don't have, Bob. And that's when James very loudly told me that something to the effect of that I don't know the law and I'm a real a-hole. So that's your local journalist. You guys need to be considering this when you're reading their sources. They are definitely biased.
And then Lisa's joining us on Facebook tonight. She's always excited to watch, but she was there today. And so this was a first for her where she attended one of these coffee events with the sheriff and said she was shocked at the amount of deputies. When she came in, because she was a little bit late, you had to walk through what they created on two sides of a hallway. You had to walk through a tunnel of deputies and staff, through a tunnel of them in order to get into Bob's meeting. Yeah. So that, it kind of like visually even represented something in terms of who is constantly flanking him. Out of that meeting, you had a couple of questions sent in a little bit earlier today from somebody who couldn't join the live broadcast tonight. So if you're ready to take those now.
Let's do it.
So there's two questions, both regarding statements made by Sheriff Norris at the coffee with the sheriff he held in Spirit Lake this morning. The first one, Sheriff Norris's response to a citizen's question concerning what his office is doing about human trafficking in the county was astounding to me. So I'm reading this in his words. A professional response might be something like, my agency takes human trafficking very seriously, though currently we have no active investigations into human trafficking, nor do we have leads with which to pursue an investigation. But instead of saying something like that, the sheriff explained how in Idaho, citizens have the right to make citizen arrests, and that if he saw any, he was directing this toward the person that was asking him the question. He said, well, if you see any trafficking, you should act and arrest the person and then contact law enforcement. Mm-hmm. As someone who has investigated trafficking, this is now the person who's sending in this question, I found this answer incredibly irresponsible and unprofessional for anyone in law enforcement, particularly a department head. Human trafficking is a form of organized crime, and individuals involved in this activity are notoriously violent.
Yes.
As you were present at this meeting this morning, what is your take on the sheriff's, not only his response, but his attitude?
Yeah. Well, Bob knows that he was running his mouth last fall at a town hall in Hayden. It was September of last year when he was asked that very question. And he stated that he sees no early warning indicators of human trafficking taking place. And that's just flat out wrong. I ran into it when I was working over on the Washington side, and I just recently separated in March of 23. So he now, because of who Bob is, he has to stick with the narrative, right? So he's caught. That's what happens when you don't tell the truth. You get caught. And so this was him. Instead of, answering a constituent, he blows up with his attitude and he forcefully asks, well, is there a problem and you can arrest somebody? And this person that wrote this question is absolutely right. And I'm going to tell the citizens of Kootenai County, yes, you do have a right to make citizens arrest in the county, but I'd highly recommend you not do that for a whole host of reasons. One is safety. Number two is for liability for false arrest. Putting that all aside, you're exactly right when you talk about the dangerous nature of organized crime, and especially when it comes to human trafficking, human enslavement. And folks, when it comes to this kind of criminal activity, disregard what 30-year and 5-year sheriff or 4-year sheriff Bob Norris tells you about going and making the arrest yourself. Do not do that. Leave it up to the professionals. Report it. Get all the articulable facts that you can to let law enforcement know. But do not do what Bob Norris said. Do not make a citizen's arrest. I want you to be safe, and we want to be effective in being able to go after these evil doers. And we do have that on video, and we will be releasing that so you can hear it word for word, the absurdity. And he's going to try to run out, he's going to try to get in front of this one and, claim he's being misquoted. It's this typical MO of Bob that never accepts any responsibility. Well, it's not misquoted when you hear the question, you hear his answer and hear him stepping into the person who asked it and stepping into the camera. The second part of the question that came in from this coffee with your sheriff meeting that was in Spirit Lake this morning, he says, I asked the sheriff which he thought was more important, law enforcement experience or personal character. He replied they were equal. How do you respond to that statement? Well, I know why he's saying that, right? Because he can be half right, half wrong, and half right. I would argue and say that character is always very, very important because your character sets the stage for everything else in how you administer and how you do things. And I think specifically he was saying that regarding being a sheriff. So we know that for weeks and months now, Bob has spread the message that Dan Wilson has zero experience inside the sheriff's office. He discredits 12 years of my time working on the streets, being in my own police squad, being dispatched to all kinds of various calls, having to do my own reports, having to go to court, book evidence, all of those things, make arrests, book people in, go to DOAs, CPR, all that stuff. And he's trying to say you don't have any experience, but he does. And like I've told you folks before, you would expect a man who spent 30 years, I think primarily as a pencil pusher inside the sheriff's office, to have done all the things, especially if he achieved the rank of lieutenant. But the reality of it is just because you've done everything in the sheriff's office does not qualify you, as we have found out from Bob's poor performance record for the past 4 years, does not qualify everybody that's had those 30 years to be in a supervisory position, especially the highest office of the county, the sheriff. Now, when it comes to integrity, integrity it's either there or it's not. Bob and his integrity is already tarnished. We can go all the way back to the 2020 race when and this is not me making it up, this is absolutely true, and it is the evidence is there. Bob Norris contacted Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department back in 2020-ish and requested the in-house photographer help him find pictures of Mike Bauer and then Sheriff Baca, or Baca was gone, but of Sheriff Baca and Captain Mike Bauer, who was captain of the Special Enforcement Bureau, the most high-speed, department of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. And what happened is that he lied to this photographer, stating, "Hey, Captain Bauer had a flood in his house, lost some photos, and I'm trying to find photos to help restore them." And later on, the photographer kind of did a Google search on Bob Norris, found out that he was running against Captain Mike Bauer, also from Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, retired. And he said, "Hey, this is not right. You lied to me. You're running against him." The response from Bob, as has been shown in the written form, Bob says, "Well, it's a friendly race." So Bob is a liar. Bob also lied about his, tax exempt status. When he moved up here to Kootenai County, he was claiming residency while he still had his California license. It looks like he may have been living in his home down in California all the way up to 2017. He claimed that it was an error. It's always somebody else's fault. But Bob has done a lot of bad things, including the alleged, incident out at Cataldo, where he called this woman these extremely sexually aggressive names. And then doubled down later on, offering a $10,000 reward for anybody that could find video to refute what she said. So your character, Bob, is already dead. So I would say then, based on your scale of experience versus character, I'll beat you on character every single day, and you may have me on experience, but with character, I can still whip your ass when it comes to being a sheriff.
Now, the Board of County Commissioners had a meeting tonight, and one of the things they discussed, I think, was a line item for license plate readers for KCSO.
Yeah.
And there's been an outpouring in the community of people who are concerned about this because of surveillance. I think Commissioner Duncan actually probably just read your question, and they've cut to Sheriff Norris now, who's responding to it. So I thought you maybe would want to pop in on that and see what they're talking about.
A quick second here.
Let me give it a try.
However, it's going in that direction. I'm seeking a tool set that not only can help us fight crime, but effectively, with the limited resources we have, also put the safeguards in place to ensure the officer's safety and your public privacy.
It's always officer safety.
Those safeguards
always officer safety.
Public record.
And he's reading his answer.
Frequent audits.
Let's cut away from this. Let's talk about
information.
So last week, I was discussing my opposition to 15-minute cities, smart cities, and the constant surveillance state. And yes, I am one of the very few law enforcement candidates that not only believes in law and order, but I also believe in limits on the government and in law enforcement specifically on what they can or can't do to potentially harm the citizens. This, again, folks, is why I tell you over and over again, you don't necessarily want a career cop in these positions, because to them, every problem needs to be solved with a law enforcement solution. And while they claim that the use of tools is only going to benefit the citizens, public safety, like Bruce Mattare was saying earlier, the flip side of that is that who governs these that are employing it? Now, look, I'm going to be the biggest advocate of my deputies. I want all my deputies to be absolutely secure and safe to go home to their families, and taken care of financially. But I also want to make certain that the citizens' rights, which law enforcement exists to protect the citizens' rights, to make certain that their life, liberty, and property are properly protected because the consent of the people that establish this government, those that consent, demand this. So Bob recently was asking for these license plate reader software. And so I'm going to read it. I don't have my glasses on, so I'm going to try to pull it up here. See if I can.
Do you know what I'm putting up on the screen?
Well, I'm assuming you're putting my letter up.
Well, don't assume anything. You tell me. I don't know where you're going.
All right, let's do that. I don't know. I'm just going to read
Wilson
this
letter.
So I sent this in to the county commissioners tonight and requested that it be read into the record since I was not there. And this is regarding license plate reader technology. Just a little recap. Cooney County Sheriff's Office, through public records, disclosed that they have currently, I think it's 36 SUVs where they purchased Motorola license plate reader cameras, and then they had them installed on the vehicles when they were building them out down in Utah, including an additional 8 F-150s. So they already put these cameras in almost 40 patrol vehicles. Now, what they're doing is those cameras run off of software that Motorola sells. Motorola sells the cameras, and Motorola sells the technology, the software that runs these cameras. And what it does is these cameras are scanning, hundreds of license plates per hour. They can track things up to 100-something miles per hour. And what they're doing is they're constantly running it through a massive database to find out whether or not the car is wanted, whether the owner occupants, the registered owners are wanted, whether the car is stolen, all sorts of other, variables. And so the request is quite extensive. They want about $20,000 a year to utilize these 40 licenses for use in patrol. We're already at a budget shortfall. We're talking about, I think, a 2 to 3% increase overall countywide in property taxes, which I'm not happy about. But they're currently being demoed by Motorola. So Motorola is the big umbrella, and their software division that runs these is Vigilant. So I'm going to read what I asked the commissioners to read tonight. I'm not able to attend the Board of County Commissioners fiscal year 25 budget public hearing tonight, and I'm writing to give you my statement regarding the current budgeted KCSO license plate reader software for fiscal year 25. As Americans, we hold sacred our rights to be free of illegal searches and seizures as guaranteed in the Fourth Amendment of the Bill of Rights. In general, Americans, to especially include Kootenai County citizens, value our privacy above all others. The current KCSO budget is requesting to spend approximately $20,640 per year for license plate reader software that would allow approximately 36 patrol vehicles already equipped with Motorola LPR cameras and possibly other manufacturer LPRs to be used during routine patrol. The 5-year contract will cost an accumulative $103,700. Per Motorola's own current LPR usage and privacy policy, it states, under use and collection of LPR data, the company authorizes collection of LPR data for the use of the company and its customers consistent with this policy. The authorized use of LPR systems are by customers to identify or ascertain the location of a specific vehicle under circumstances when there is a legitimate commercial interest, not law enforcement, commercial, by law enforcement agencies for law enforcement purposes. 3, by the company to make LPR data available to customers and law enforcement agencies. Get that? And law enforcement agencies for the purposes above, and to provide market research information to customers based on aggregated LPR data. And then they go on to say, we're going to cite some U.S. code, section 2721, title 18. So I go on and I say, meaning that Motorola does indeed store citizen vehicle data and distribute this data for both law enforcement and commercial use. Remember, not just law enforcement, but commercial use. Under U.S. Code Title 18, Chapter 123, subsection 2721, it gives various permissions for allowing use of this personal information to include for commercial and other federal law enforcement agencies, the latter of which has continually demonstrated its abuse of American citizens' Fourth Amendment rights. They simply cannot be trusted to not violate the people of Idaho's rights to be secure in their person, places, and effects. In February of this year, Idaho House Bill 688 was introduced, which would regulate and limit all data collected by LPRs in the state. Unfortunately, this bill died in committee, leaving the citizens of Idaho exposed to this unregulated data collection and invasion of privacy. So just so you know, folks, in Idaho, there is nothing right now protecting you against whatever they're doing with this massive amount of data that they're collecting that Motorola admits that they're doing, which means if you're driving and you happen to come in contact with one of these LPRs, that data of where you were located with your license plate is stored. That means even if you're not doing something, like I've heard some of the arguments on local chat rooms of ignorant individuals that call themselves patriots, if you're not doing anything wrong, we don't care. Think about that, but I digress. Furthermore, per the public records request, Lieutenant Headland states that there is no current KCSO policy on deputies using LPRs and only refers them to NCIC ILETS training and certification conducted by Idaho State Patrol. The citizens of Kootenai County deserve to know why the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office would employ such hardware software without any current policies that may have been reviewed by county attorneys, even after Motorola has been demoing the software to Kootenai County Sheriff's Office for several months now. This is irresponsible, unprofessional, and garners no trust of Kootenai County citizens to the Sheriff's Office. Lastly, the Motorola LPR software Vigilant has been quoted by salesman R.J. Garwood, who is listed as a volunteer Kootenai County Regional Air Support Unit helicopter pilot. It should be noted that the KCSO Deputy Lieutenant Mark Ellis, who has been listed as the CFO of this private corporation, manages and oversees this air unit for Kootenai County Sheriff's Office. On the surface, it appears that this resembles a pay-to-play relationship until proven otherwise. Lastly, it is my firmly held belief that the citizens of Kootenai County do not want to live in a surveillance state and do accept a certain amount of risk in their day-to-day lives and do not consent to trade their dangerous liberty for a certain security. Kootenai County Sheriff's Office cannot guarantee that the data gathered by these LPRs will be secure and not sold to commercial entities, private investigators, or federal law enforcement agencies. And with the current budget overages, the cost for this software is not a necessity.
While Dan is continuing to comment on this with the license plate readers, I assume there's hardware and software.
Yeah.
You can chime in that comment section as to your thoughts on these license readers that are on patrol cars. So it's automatically collecting data. And like you said, the arguments on chat rooms have been, look, if you're not doing anything wrong, they're not going to auto run your plate.
It's a great tool for law enforcement. Look, I was one of those guys out in the car. In fact, I have been in vehicles that have LPR technology. They didn't work very well 10 years ago.
As I recall, you're saying there.
But here's the rub. In Kootenai County, the state of Idaho runs them. We have them on the freeway as you're coming in from Post Falls. We have them with other police agencies. So look, I'm not saying that they don't exist, but the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office that is supposed to be protecting everybody's rights, the Fourth Amendment included, they should be leading the charges saying, look, we are comfortable taking a little bit of risk as citizens. You can argue all day long as law enforcement that we could put you in a complete bubble to protect you and to make you secure and safe.
But then you
have no liberty.
Your freedoms.
Liberty comes at the cost of certain security.
Now, here's the giant surprise is in this county commissioner meeting that's still going on right now because there were so many comments and questions from the community. But early on when they opened it up to questions, we found out in Bruce Mattare's own words, County Commissioner Bruce Mattare, that he has a a device or a covering on his plate that diffuses that automatic license plate reader. And then he went into a long diatribe about where he's come from and after 9/11 and he's against the surveillance state. And he somehow turned that into victimhood as to why he has that on his plate.
Gaslighting and deflecting, and it's a Solinsky tactic for those of you in Rio Linda that don't understand that. And yeah, I think it's hilarious that we have a county commissioner who wasn't even named by the commenter that came up to address. He just said a county commissioner has this LPR defeating covering on his license plate. And it was Bruce himself that said it was me. And he gave us all this reason saying he would accept whatever tickets he got until, they could give him all sorts until he decided that it wasn't worth it anymore. So you have a county commissioner also stating that publicly that he's willing to, violate the law, which, I'm not disagreeing with, but, Bruce kind of likes to pick and choose when he wants to obey law enforcement and when he doesn't. You recall that February town hall where I was speaking and he came in and tried to take a snippet of something and claimed that I was anti-law enforcement.
Yeah.
Kind of similar to that, isn't it, Bruce?
It's fun when you
Ha!
All right. For those of you who maybe are joining us later in the hour, remember that you can put your question or comment right into the comment section, whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram. And Instagram, I tend to see people logging on and possibly getting kicked off. So if you're having trouble with that feed there, just go on over to YouTube and join us there and you get the full screen. Let's see. Logan on Facebook says in some states, those that cover their license plate with a material to defeat readers are illegal.
Yeah, well, I think that's what Special Deputy. So you have a deputy.
I think he was admitting
you have a special deputy, right? Somebody that's
setting the
example by not obeying the law. So yeah, look, I agree with Bruce. Though I don't like surveillance state. In fact, I reject it. I reject it so much that I will gladly take the risks of not having my liberty squelched than to continually argue why law enforcement needs every bit of technology that it can possibly garner in order to protect the people. That's not really the job. You're not Skynet. You're not supposed to be there to make certain that any and every bad thing that could happen in life is a variable that's at a zero.
Speaking of every bad thing.
Yeah.
Kootenai County Sheriff's Office ended up with their own helicopter, and they did it through the creation of a nonprofit so they could sell, as we call it, kind of sell a bill of goods to the citizens of Kootenai County, saying, look, we can get this helicopter. We're going to keep you more safe than we ever have, but we're going to get access to this helicopter, and it's not going to cost you, the taxpayers, a dime for 2 straight years.
Yeah.
And that launched us into some investigative research and investigative journalism. Months of research.
This is how messed up the Kootenai County Regional Air Support Unit program and all of its tentacles are. It's that messed up.
And as part of our research, we're asking ourselves, okay, not only are we seeing Able One, this KCSO nonprofit helicopter,
it's almost owned by the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office because
it's confusing.
The private corporation, and I'm ruining your train of thought, so don't lose it. They have registered this non-profit corporation, their operations at the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office, not only with the state, but also with the FAA, and their remittance address also to the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office. So once again, folks, we don't know where the Kootenai County Regional Air Support Unit, a private corporation 501c3, ends, and Lieutenant Mark Ellis, Kootenai County Sheriff's Office, lieutenant in charge of the air unit, who also is overseeing his own corporation, where that one begins and the other one ends.
And they're commissioning, or whatever you call it, they've got to commission tactical flight officers to then man the helicopter and special training and these really nice flight suits. And that thing, and where I was going with this originally is you're good. You and I noticed that thing's flying all the time.
Yeah.
But we're 2 people, and where are we that often? We're not that spread out. So we hear, though, from people all over the place, that thing's flying around my house. Another person, I'm sitting out at a field watching my kids play baseball.
Yep.
That thing's flying, like circling around the field. We've been in downtown Coeur d'Alene. That thing's circling around.
Annoying
We're
one.
like, what are they? What are they surveilling? So the question is, and you're going to take this and run with it, but the question is, we're sitting here after all this research we've done for months. Okay, this thing's flying all the time.
Mm-hmm.
How often were they flying the helicopter from Spokane or the Two Bear Air that's out of Montana?
Yeah.
How often were they flying those units? How often was it necessary and needed when we had that MOU with Spokane and Two Bear Air?
Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah.
So you take that and...
Well, I want to point folks to my website, theidahosheriff.com, and you can look up Bob's Crooked Helicopter. And
I'm going to show that while you're
on
talking.
that page, I have a kind of a summary document. It's a PDF, and you can open that up, and it'll take you to the actual Board of County Commissioner meetings, where on I think it was October 4th of 2022, and then February 28th of 2023. Lieutenant Mark Ellis and Sheriff Robert Bob Norris were presenting their request to disregard using the Two Bear Air rescue helicopters for search and rescue out of Kalispell, and also the Spokane County Sheriff's Office Air 1, Air 2, because they have a great air support unit with funded by lots of grants, and why they needed to use this private helicopter for 2 years. So
you can see there, as Dan's going to continue on the website, we got all this documented, and he's got downloadable, or we put downloadable PDFs here on the bottom of that article on the website.
You can hear it in your own words. And we're going to show slide number 1, and we're going to kind of go over this. But I took these screenshots from when they were presenting to the Board of County Commissioners, and you're going to see this very first slide. And this is what Lieutenant Ellis and Bob Norris were presenting to the county commissioners. It was supposed to be a 2-year pilot program funded by private donors, no additional taxpayer cost, constant evaluation of the program by documenting calls for service, activity of the air unit, and cost of the program. We haven't seen the cost of the program yet, by the way.
Oh, no.
Reallocating $10,000 currently paid to Spokane County Air Support to Kootenai County Air Support. By the way, Lieutenant Ellis's brother, Dave Ellis, was former undersheriff at Spokane County Sheriff's Office, and also used to oversee their air unit. Just kind of a little trivia there for you. And then utilizing $100,000 of asset forfeiture to purchase thermal camera, spotlight, and cabling. So these are what was being presented. We're going to go down to the next page. Helicopter mission role, 24/7 call-out availability for emergency situations such as search and rescue, major law enforcement events, SWAT operations, shootings, riots, natural disasters, because we have riots all the time in Kootenai County. Ask Brett Surplus.
Yeah, Brett Surplus. He'll message you if there's anything coming. Emphasis
patrols for specific public safety issues such as, pay attention, speeding, aggressive driving on the roadway, as well as waterways. Special events as authorized by the sheriff, emergency transports, dignitary transports, public relations. Okay. Now, that last one, emphasis patrols. I didn't cue the video up because I didn't want to run it, but the folks can see this on the February 28th Board of County Commissioners. I even give the timestamp. They were flat out in the same presentation saying that it's not going to be used for speeding, aggressive driving on the roadways. Later on, the commissioners voiced their concern that it's going to be used for traffic enforcement and water, marine enforcement. And Bob Norris says right then and there, we don't have any plans to do that. So he contradicts himself in the very meeting that he's presenting, saying it's going to be used for this purpose. And we know that they have been using it for traffic enforcement.
Well, when you say you don't have any plans, then again, when you don't have a guy that's governed by doctrines that don't change, you can say, well, we don't have any plans, but then our plans changed.
Sure. All right, we're going to go over an hour. Hopefully you can stay on. If not, you can come back and watch whatever that's left after you drop out. Now, the next one, the last slide, this is very important. This gets to the heart of what we're going to talk about tonight. Uses of the helicopter. Search and rescue. They claimed 316 missing person calls in 2020. That's significant because that was a year of COVID. 365 missing person calls in 2021.
But none of those were trafficked.
Mm-hmm. Now, under this, it says 35 full search and rescue calls where search and rescue teams were deployed. 2-Bear Air used 13 times in Cooney County, over 50 in 5 northern Idaho counties. Bookmark that in your minds. The next is recruitment and retention, because they're trying to say, hey, if we use this helicopter, deputies will want to come and work for us because they might get to be a TAC officer.
Well, it looks cool on the resume.
Public demonstrations and community events, which we know that has been predominantly the use of, and I can show this statistically here in just a second, versus patrol. And then lastly, use of thermal camera, searchlight, aerial view, high speed, or speed of helicopter pursuit monitor. Okay. Here's what's important. If we go to slide number 2. I requested a couple weeks ago records from the sheriff's office, and I wanted to specifically know how many times the Cooney County Sheriff's Office had requested deployment of either Spokane County's Air 1, Air 2 into Cooney County for law enforcement purposes and or search and rescue. And the same question was asked about 2-Bear Air. And so my records request, if we go all the way down to the bottom here, I got the request, and it basically said, we don't keep any records. I probably didn't give you the correct slide, I'm guessing. My prep was poor today. But anyway, so what happened was I get the response back, and they give me 2 records for the deployments in 2023 and 2024 to date, but absent was Spokane County and 2-Bear Air, and they said, we don't keep those records. You're going to have to go and get those from Flathead and from Spokane. So I responded back and I said, Ms. Simmons, since it appears that the administration does not recognize the intent of my question regarding Spokane and 2-Bear Air, I'll be more direct. Concerning the Cooney County Sheriff's Office, I'm requesting the following. All requested deployments, incident numbers, and reasons for deployment for Spokane Air Unit from 2019 to 2022, and all requested deployments, incident numbers, and reasons for the deployment 2-Bear Air from 2019 to 2022. This is for every requested deployment from KCSO to Cooney, I'm going to mess it up, from Cooney County Sheriff's Office to Cooney County. The response I got was, per Lieutenant Ellis. Remember, Lieutenant Ellis is the CFO, the registered agent of the Cooney Regional Air Support Unit, that is in contract with himself overseeing it at the Cooney County Sheriff's Office. Jay Simmons says, Cooney County Sheriff's Office does not track those requests and as such does not have any records as requested. I suggest, again, reaching out to Spokane County or Flathead County as they likely track all their flights, much like we track all of our flights. Now go back to the previous slide, number 1. If they don't have these records, and I claim that they're obstructing, I don't believe that any law enforcement professional truly believes the Cooney County Sheriff's Office has no way of tracking the amount of times that they requested another agency to come in to give them support. So if this is not true and they aren't keeping track, then how did Mark Ellis, who was selling this to the people, selling the urgency, how is he able to say that it was overused 13 times by Cooney, 2-Bear Air used 13 times in Cooney County and over 50 times in North Idaho? How does Mark Ellis know this if records can't provide it to us?
The records don't exist.
This is really the problem of what continually happens with Cooney County Sheriff's Office by the administration and the continual obstruction of giving me the information they know damn good and well that I'm asking for. No transparency. So current flight logs that I do have, I'm going to show slide number 3. These are going to be a little hard to read because they give them in a format that's, pretty large. But if you slide all the way over to the right so people can see, everything in red is legit law enforcement purposes. Everything else, especially I said that backwards. Everything in red was training. Everything in green for 2023 is legitimate law enforcement deployments. And all the rest were showing up at parades, parks, Black Rock demonstrations. Out of 20 total flights, only 7 were legit for law enforcement.
And what year was that?
2023.
Okay.
Why do people care? Remember that we were sold a bill of crap that it was no longer feasible for us to rely on tube air that has hoist capabilities, even though the new helicopter that replaced that, the Kootenai Regional Air Support Unit, has no hoist capabilities. And that it was too cumbersome to use a $10,000 a year agreement to use Spokane County's helicopter. Well, for the first year, when you have only 7 total flights, I think the numbers speak for themselves. It's highly ridiculous because, I mean, it's almost 25% that was legit. The rest were not legit.
Yeah. And I will say, we talked to people even at the fair that it's impressive that when parents are impressed, their kids are being shown the helicopter lands and it's at a community event. It's a wow factor for the kids. And when the kids are happy, the parents are happy, and it makes the sheriff's department and the sheriff look really good. It's very good in terms of optics. We had a lady at the fair that said, well, I thought that was cool. And they let our kids jump up into it and sit in the seats and walk through and touch and feel everything. And so it's a feel good moment for the sheriff's department within the community. But the more that we've uncovered and the investigation we've done, I also think it's easy to jump past that. Okay, it's kind of fun and maybe comforting that we have this available, but more and more people are asking questions like, what really is going on
and
here?
Where's the funding? We were told directly that for the first year they were running numbers of the donations through the search and rescue portion. But we still cannot find any record that there is an actual 501c3 filed with the IRS. So we want to know what's really going on with the money. Now I'm starting to lose my voice. I think we're going to wrap this up.
No, Dan had a couple of other actually really juicy things he wanted to talk about. Who knows? We may do. Week. Yeah, we'll see you again next week at 7. But we've had a great time tonight. There's been a lot going on between the state fair and just a lot going on since last Wednesday. So we've got more next week. Okay.
Any questions that we didn't answer?
Nope. We breezed through those in the beginning, but yeah, we've got Bob wearing a body camera at the North Idaho State Fair. That's a juicy segment. That's going to be a fun one.
Refusing to turn over the coverage for public disclosure like he's required to do. Public records, rather.
Yeah, and he was in his official capacity, so that was an interesting one. And then we have Dan Wilson that essentially made a prediction about some of this illegal immigration issues and how that blew up this last week when it appeared as though, or there was a reputable source that came out with information that Kootenai County was, well, at first people were saying sanctuary city, and they got, that got everybody all riled up, but then it was listed as non-cooperative. And then Bob Norris came out with a statement saying this is false information. But there's ICE 287G, I think it is. And this is something that Dan Wilson was talking about back in May.
Yeah.
And Bob Norris is just answering questions about it a few days ago. Like 100%, absolutely, we're going to do that.
And Bob is continually behind the curve because he doesn't pay attention to anything proactive. He doesn't
That's ultimately the point. So we'll discuss that next Wednesday live. But anything else you want to say to us on the way out? If you have a voice to do it. No, I'm probably worn out my welcome. We haven't articulated everything the greatest today. But remember, we didn't descend from fearful men. Stay strong and of good courage. Message me anything that you have questions about. We look forward to seeing you all after this great holiday coming up. Enjoy your families. Love them every chance you get. God bless you all. God bless Kootenai County. Thanks, you guys, for joining us over there on Instagram. We got Skinny Nose. Thanks for joining us. Nana KC60. She says, thanks for the info. I'm assuming Nana's she and not he. Thank you for joining us tonight on the Idaho Sheriff live stream broadcast with Dan Wilson for Kootenai County Sheriff. We're here every Wednesday night at 7 p.m., so join us again next week. Thank you, Koi Pond Kid. He says, night, guys. Good night to you, too. We're here every Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Idaho Sheriff. See, everything's easy to find, The Idaho Sheriff.
Everything's easy to find but my voice. When you subscribe
on YouTube, but your voice, maybe by next week. Subscribe on YouTube, you'll get automatic reminders when we go live, so that's pretty nifty. And for the Idaho Sheriff podcast, listen and subscribe wherever you get your shows. Learn more about Dan Wilson, his platform, policies, and viewpoints. So for any of you who are saying, Dan Wilson's ideas are vague, he gives nothing but platitudes and conservative buzzwords, it's not true, because it's all available. All the policies and viewpoints on our website at theidahosheriff.com. And every Wednesday night at 7 p.m., he's going to answer any question you have. We'll see you next week.
That's all.